So you're a sugar addict, I'm a sugar addict. What's your strategy for becoming less of a sugar addict? It'll probably take you your whole life if you conquer that. I mean, even if you had a strong intention to overcome your sugar addiction, probably take you 25, 30 years if you ever do it. The odds are you probably won't. You'll probably die a sugar addict. If you're born in America, that's kind of the way it is. But how can you improve on that? Because the sugar, I think it's 120 or so pounds a year of added sugar the average American's taking in. A lot of sugar, a lot of corrosion, a lot of corruption for the cells in your body. How do you wean yourself off and become less of a sugar addict so that you have more vibrance, more vitality, more longevity, less health problems, less stomach problems, better hormone regulation, better blood sugar regulation, better release of your insulin hormone, less of a burden on your pancreas, your liver? How do you do that? Where do you start? Well, the first thing is to realize that the added sugar is the real demon in the room. And so you would want to go to fruit sugars. Even though it's fructose, it's metabolized different. Fruit sugars are metabolized different. There's been a lot of research, a lot of studies on if people eat 10 to 15 or even sometimes 20 plus servings of fruit a day, what does that do to the human body? What does that do to insulin levels? And what they found is that, yes, the body metabolizes fruit sugars much different. It's much more friendly to the insulin response and insulin regulation. However, let me say that with an asterisk. I'm not convinced myself. I don't consider someone eating 10, 15, 20 servings of fruit per day to be top of the pyramid optimal for longevity, for maximum vibrance or vitality. I personally don't subscribe to that. But I would say it is definitely a lesser than evils. It's a solid selection. If you got a choice between the fruit and the sugars and the refined sugars and the high fructose corn syrup, or even a lot of the refined carbs which are going to go into your body, they become de facto sugar. They're going to break down and become a sugar again in your body. Hey, the fruit all day. So for a lot of people, since you are a sugar addict, just like any addict of anything, drug addicts, if you just take away their drug, they're going to freak out. They're going to be miserable. They're going to be hating life. So in those first couple days, especially if you're fasting, right, you go through different periods, and periods of misery and periods of agitation. Fasting can be a good way around it. Could be miserable for the first couple of days, 2-3 days, and then you might get used to it. Of course, you should be eating. I'm not going to sit here. This is not going to be a video about fasting. You have to look elsewhere right now for that. But if you've got a protocol that you like out there on fasting, that can help with your sugar cravings. But for most of you, you're going to have to go to fruit, to cherries, to berries. Berries are usually lower in the glycemic index, less of a blood spike, right? Strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. Cranberries have more fructose in them, but you could even do cranberries. They still have fiber. You could do apples, bananas if you're an athlete and you're working out a lot. You could eat bananas too. In the meantime, you're going to have that sugar craving. Mangoes and watermelon and on and on and on and on. But that's one way to plug it. Now, the problem with fruit is that for a lot of people, fruit can get expensive. That's one of the problems with fruit, is that people don't feel satiated, they don't feel full, and it also can get expensive. I mean, you go to a place like Whole Foods and you buy a fruit bowl. I mean, you could spend $7, $8 for a big bowl of fruit and still be hungry. You could spend $8 for a fruit and vegetable juice in a place like Whole Foods and be hungry 90 minutes later. That is one of the problems. One of the problems is expense. When you start talking about going the veggie, the fruit route especially, it can get expensive. I mean, you could spend $3 on some wild blueberries, and that's not gonna fill you up. Now that's $3. Now you've got to spend on top of that too. So if you're out and you're out eating, right? You didn't meal prep, then it can get expensive in a hurry, especially when you're messing around with fruits and buying fruits. I mean, apples now are I mean, you know, $3 a pound a lot of times for the Honeycrisp apples, which a lot of people like, and it can get expensive in a hurry now. So that's one of the problems with fruit as a surrogate. And that's one of the problems with healthy eating in general. Unless you do the food prep yourself, right, and you buy from Sprouts or even a Walmart, some things are definitely worth buying at Whole Foods because they have a better selection. Even though a lot of other places are selling a lot more organic and they're closing the gap, but Whole Foods still has the best, most vast selection. But it can get expensive really quick, and that's a problem for a lot of people. That's a video for another time. We're talking about eating on a budget. What are you going to eat? That's one of the problems with fruit. But fruit is the way you want to go as a surrogate, as a pit stop, and you might stay there for years on the road to becoming less of a sugar addict, becoming less of a slave to sugar. For me personally, where I want to go to where I'm taking in maybe 3 to 5 fruit servings a day, where fruits are an indulgence, where I eat fruit basically mainly seasonal, and the exception would be an avocado or some wild blueberries or wild strawberries or wild raspberries, or apple cider vinegar, which is, you know, fruit derived, a fruit hybrid with the vinegar, which is fantastic for you. But in general, where I'm headed is to treat fruit more like an indulgence, more like a treat. A lot of the fruits are not essential foods. They're not necessary foods. And they've been, you know, modern fruit has been, by the time it's taken off the vine and by the time it gets to us, and all of the pesticides and the diminished nutrient value of it, vitamin value of it, it's like, you know, yeah, if you're on a farm or you're somewhere where you're growing your own, or your friend is growing their own, different story. But or if you live in California or somewhere where there's a really awesome farmer's market, different story. But the way that the popular selling of fruit and the commercialized fruit, I'm less and less of a fan of it for longevity, for peak performance. That doesn't mean that it's not right for you. I'm just saying for someone like me that wants the best of the best and wants to head toward optimization, toward peak performance, toward peak longevity, that is not really in the cards for me. I think a real scale back of fruit for me. You know, maybe fruit at best to me is a solid selection. It's not spectacular like a chlorella or black beans or garbanzo beans or a super salad, or the trace minerals and the herbs and some of the great herbal teas that are out there, and you know, or even different hydration protocols. Those to me, and even just your mindset and doing what you love and enjoying your life, those to me are much more important. I don't think that, I mean, a lot of the people that I know that are eating a lot of fruit, they're eating it because they're still sugar addicts, and that's their preferred fuel is sugar. And I'm just not a big fan of that. I still think that it's not optimal. I don't think you can compare that to eating sprouted broccoli or chlorella or some celery and some almond butter, or even some steamed squash with a bunch of, you know, oregano or Himalayan sea salt or Redmond sea salt and chia and flax. I just don't think it's even in the same league to me. You can get, you know, for instance, vitamin C. Yes, I'm a big fan of lemons, but you can get, instead of oranges, which people love, you can get more vitamin C in a yellow bell pepper, for instance. So you can still get alternative sources of, say, the vitamin C from lemon or the yellow bell pepper with a lot less of the fructose and the sugars. So that's just me personally, but you work with where you want to go. You're going to have to stockpile fruit. It can get expensive, but that's where you're going to have to go for your next step if you want to wean off of sugar. And then eventually you're going to, you know, you play around with fasting. That may help with some of your sugar cravings. And you're going to want to start to eat a lot more nuts and good nut butters, and a lot more, get really good with super salads. Balsamic vinaigrette is the way to go on those salads. And that's really, it's a process. It is a years-long process for the vast majority of us just to quit sugar cold turkey. Very, you know, less than 1% will be able to do that. But that is a starting point to wean yourself off of sugar.